My best friends invited my boyfriend to their wedding, but didn't include me, even though I've been close to them for 6 years. For some context, I'm a 23-year-old woman, and I've known this guy, let's call him Roger, 24M, for about 6 years now. We were both part of a musical ensemble during our first year of college, and we remained in the group for all 4 years. This is also how I met my boyfriend, who is also 24, and it's where my boyfriend met Roger too. There were a few other guys in the ensemble as well, and over time, we've all stayed pretty close. In fact, the other 4, including my boyfriend, formed a band after college, and they're still going strong today. They've even gained a fair amount of recognition in our local music scene. For reference, the local music scene here includes about 50 active bands, so it's no small feat that they've become so well known. I didn't join the band when they started out. No hard feelings or anything, I just wasn't up for the time commitment. Now about Roger, he's been with his fiancée, 22F, since before I even met him. She eventually attended the same school as us, and over time, the group, including my boyfriend and I, became pretty friendly with her. I wouldn't say we're close friends, more like acquaintances. There's no drama or tension. We just don't hang out much outside of their shows. But whenever we see each other, we always exchange pleasantries and have friendly chats. So, fast forward to the present, Roger and his fiancée are getting married this summer. Naturally, I congratulated them both when I first heard the news of their engagement. A few months ago, we received a save the date in the mail, but here's where things got a little strange. The card was addressed only to my boyfriend. At first, I didn't think too much of it. After all, it was just a save the date. I figured the official invitation would clear things up. But last week, the wedding invite arrived. And again, it was addressed solely to my boyfriend. No mention of me. When we opened the invitation, there wasn't even a mention of a +1. Personally, I don't think I should be just a +1 for my boyfriend. I believe I deserve an invitation based on my own connection to Roger. My boyfriend suggested they might have addressed it just to him since we live together, but that's precisely my point. If it's meant for both of us, it should clearly state both our names. Otherwise, I assume it's intended only for him. Honestly, this oversight has left me incredibly hurt. I understand if we're not considered close friends, but knowing that every other member of our old group was invited, it feels like a real slap in the face. It makes me question whether I'm supposed to attend the wedding at all. Update as of August 14th, 2024. Hi everyone. Just to recap from my last post, we have friends, though I'm now questioning that, who are getting married this weekend. My dilemma stemmed from my name being absent from the wedding invitation addressed to my fiancée at our shared apartment. My fiancée and I met Roger at the same time, and we formed relationships around the same period, engaging closely through our musical group at school. Although my fiancée continued with the group, forming a band with the others, I opted out due to the extensive time commitment, which doesn't bother me since they are indeed very busy. Despite this, I frequently interact with both Roger and his fiancée. We've had nothing but pleasant exchanges, like each other's social media posts, and generally maintain what I assumed was a friendly rapport. Given that my fiancée and I have been living together for 3 years, the omission of my name on the invite sent to our apartment strikes me as a clear sign that I wasn't meant to be invited. My fiancé tried to reassure me, suggesting it might have been an oversight or perhaps someone else made an error while writing the invitations. However, when I broached the possibility of asking them directly about my exclusion, I was advised against it, with the consensus being that it would be inappropriate and confirming the likelihood that I was deliberately not invited. Many agreed that the situation was undeniably rude. I eventually accepted that explanation, and while I still feel the omission was quite rude, I've decided to let it go. I have no intention of speaking ill of them or causing any drama. After all, it's their wedding, and they have the right to invite whomever they choose, though they shouldn't expect an invitation to mine in return. This decision was solidified when another person from our group sent out save the dates for his wedding, and both our names were included. This contrasted starkly with an invitation we received from one of my fiancé's friends, whom I had only met a few times, yet our names were both listed there as well. But let's refocus. The reason I'm writing today is that the wedding is this weekend. For some reason, my fiancé keeps asking if I'm planning to attend. He even spoke to the groom, who verbally assured him that I was indeed invited. However, Since my name wasn't on the formal invitation or the save the date, I can't rely solely on a verbal assurance as sufficient proof of my welcome. I firmly believe that if I were genuinely invited, following my fiance's inquiry about the absence of my name, someone from the couple should have reached out to me directly if they truly expected my attendance. Yet, they haven't. And strangely, my fiancé seems convinced they expect me to be there. He's also expressed concern about having to explain my absence to others. Here's where I feel conflicted. I genuinely do not wish to create any drama surrounding their wedding. I respect their decision if they choose not to include me. It's their special day, and they shouldn't feel compelled to invite someone they'd rather not. However, I'm also acutely aware that many of our mutual friends who will be in attendance know us as a couple and might wonder about my absence. This could potentially stir discussions if someone decides to inquire directly with the bride and groom. I realize it might sound like I'm expecting to be the center of attention, which is not my intention. But given that my fiancé and I are seldom seen apart, my absence will undoubtedly raise some eyebrows among our friends who might not understand the subtleties of the situation. I'm truly at a loss about what to do next. Here are the options as I see them. First, I could take my fiancé's word for it, that despite all indications to the contrary, they really do want me there, and just show up, risking the chance that I might be unwelcome and potentially cause upset on their wedding day. Alternatively, I could choose not to attend and either concoct a fake story for my fiancé to tell everyone to avoid stirring up gossip, or simply have him tell the truth, that I wasn't invited, or let him decide what to say if he's uncomfortable sharing that. I'm leaning towards the third option. While it might seem a bit petty, my rationale is that if they didn't want people to question why I'm not there, they should have formally invited me. This might sound petty, but I don't see why I should fabricate a story for them when they haven't shown me the basic respect due to my fiancé's long-term partner, someone they've known for years, let alone as a friend. What do you think? Is there another approach here where I can stand up for myself without coming off poorly? Or is this a situation where I can only maintain the moral high ground by covering for them because it's their wedding day? I welcome any thoughts and advice, and please feel free to ask for clarification on any point that might seem confusing or incomplete. Also, there's an additional detail I didn't know how to incorporate earlier. When we initially received the invitation addressed solely to my fiancé, I discussed it with a friend who only vaguely knows the couple, as I wanted an outside perspective from someone who wouldn't raise the issue directly with them. Last month, she mentioned that another friend of hers, who was quite close to the bride throughout school and believed they were still friends, was also not invited. I'm not sure how much this changes the overall picture, but it seems relevant to the situation. Edit. I initially wanted to ask for clarification regarding the invitation, but having never faced such a situation, I sought advice from others more experienced with wedding etiquettes. The consensus was overwhelmingly clear. Asking for clarification would make me seem inconsiderate since it's obvious that I wasn't invited. Moreover, putting them in the awkward position of having to explicitly tell me I wasn't included would be inappropriate. Instead of criticizing my request for guidance, contributing your perspectives when I first asked might have better illustrated why I felt it was improper to inquire directly. Edit 2. Thanks to everyone who provided constructive advice, helping me navigate this dilemma. To those who were condescending about my decision not to confront them, consider how you would feel if someone you didn't invite to your wedding confronted you about the omission. While I understand the importance of being upfront, some people prefer to avoid potential drama, and that's perfectly acceptable on their special day. It's really not my place to cause a commotion. If this was indeed an oversight, then it's up to them to address it. We could then share a laugh and move past it. However, if my suspicions are correct, it would be inconsiderate of me to create a scene on a day that doesn't revolve around me. This isn't about a generation being too afraid to communicate. It's about recognizing when it's appropriate to step back and not make a situation about oneself. In the end, this is a scenario where I should refrain from adding any drama. I've considered the possibility of an honest mistake and am open to accepting that explanation should they offer it. But for now, I've decided to graciously accept the situation as it is and plan something enjoyable for myself this weekend. Update 2, August 19th, 2024. Although it's not particularly exciting, I know some of you were curious, so here's what happened. I'm relieved I chose not to attend. My fiance returned from the wedding quite displeased and confirmed my reservations were justified. It turns out I wasn't the only partner who didn't attend, and my fiance is still confused by the whole situation. It struck him as strange, especially considering who was left out. Plenty of guests asked about me and where I was, and my fiance just gave a generic response, saying I couldn't make it. Oddly enough, neither the bride nor the groom asked about me. However, the groom did make a remark to my fiance along the lines of, "Can't wait for your wedding," which made my fiance realize I had been right all along. What stood out even more was that none of the bridal party, many of whom we know well, inquired about my absence, even though other guests did. My fiance also noticed something odd. There wasn't a designated seat for me, but there were quite a few empty chairs. This has me wondering if they anticipated that some of the spouses who weren't formally invited might still show up, and they were prepared to just play it off by having extra seating. Honestly, that's about it. The entire thing feels even more confusing after the fact, but at least I feel validated in my decision. There was no drama, and I have no intention of pursuing this further with them or anyone else. Still, it's disappointing to say the least. My fiance is equally let down, especially seeing how little regard these friends seem to have for me, not just as an individual, but as his partner. But that's just how it goes. I wish they'd been straightforward, even if the reason for excluding me had been a lie. If they had said it was a matter of numbers, I could have accepted that. The way they handled this, however, felt cowardly and pathetic. And seeing that we weren't the only long-term couple treated this way says more about them. Thanks to everyone who shared advice and perspective. I'm really grateful I posted here because you all helped me feel confident in my read of the situation. You also guided me toward making the right decision, avoiding unnecessary drama or embarrassment. Comment: did the groom ask where OOP was and just invite the groom's wife to OOP's wedding? No, he didn't ask where I was. He simply told my fiance that he was excited for our wedding, but never once inquired about my absence. None of the bridal party asked about me either, even though many of our other friends did. This leads me to believe that they all knew I wasn't invited. If he had asked about me before or after making that comment, I could see how it might be interpreted differently, but he didn't, which makes it clear he didn't think anything of it. Just expected to be invited to our wedding despite not having me at his. Edit: we only got engaged at the end of June, so we haven't set a date yet. They obviously haven't received an invitation to our wedding, but he still expects to be there, even though neither he nor his wife thought I was worthy of attending theirs. My fiance tends to see the best in people, which is why he went to the wedding. It's one of the qualities I love about, but I do feel sad that he had to go and witness this firsthand. I imagine it was more hurtful for him to realize it while there, rather than accepting the situation beforehand and staying home. I don't fault him for going. I understand why he believed they wouldn't behave this way. I was just as surprised. On the flip side, if this was just an etiquette blunder and they would have asked about me, attending the wedding would have given us the chance to clear up the misunderstanding. It would have been harder to fix things if we both stayed home, but now that we've experienced it, we know these aren't people expect us, and we can move on accordingly. That wraps up this story. On to the next story, too. My fiance came out as bisexual and wanted to explore with other women, so I agreed to open our relationship. Betty, 27F, and I, 30M, got engaged in January after dating for a couple of years. Our plan was to get married next year once we'd saved enough for the wedding. Shortly after getting engaged, Betty and I moved in together at the end of January. In May, she was a bridesmaid at one of her friends' weddings. I couldn't attend due to work, plus it was a 5-day trip. Betty had a fantastic time reconnecting with her old friends, but a couple of weeks after returning, I noticed she became moody and withdrawn. I was relieved when she decided to see a therapist since she hadn't opened up to me about what was bothering her. After about 5 or 6 therapy sessions, she sat me down one Saturday morning for a serious conversation. Betty, having grown up in a very conservative household, had suppressed many of her desires until she moved away for college. Even then, certain parts of herself she refused to accept. However, at the wedding, she was introduced to the wife of one of her college friends, which stirred up a lot of repressed feelings. During the days leading up to the wedding, they spent time together, and Betty realized she was romantically and sexually attracted to both women and men, confirming that she was bisexual. I told her I was happy she felt safe enough to share this with me, and that it didn't change my feelings for her. It was an emotional moment for both. Then, she asked me how I felt about her exploring this side of her sexuality now that it was out in the open. I told her I was open to exploring it with her, perhaps through a threesome with another woman, so she could have that. However, Betty explained that she wanted a one-on-one experience with another woman and didn't feel she could fully explore that with me involved. I told her that sounded more like an affair, which I wasn't comfortable with. I asked if she wanted to reconsider the wedding or perhaps separate while she figured out what she truly wanted, but she was adamant. She was still very much in love with me, wanted to marry me, but felt she needed to explore these feelings before we settled down completely. Naturally, I asked if she had done anything inappropriate at the wedding or if she had someone in mind. I wanted to know if there had been any communication with someone else since she returned. She admitted to dancing with a girl at the reception and they shared a kiss at the end of the night, but that was all. She assured me she hadn't been in contact with anyone or planned anything beforehand. Betty recognized that what she had shared was a lot for me to process and assured me she wasn't expecting an immediate response. She asked me to keep an open mind and to continue discussing the topic as we move forward. I didn't make any promises, but I agreed to do some research and even mentioned speaking with a coworker who has an open marriage to get a better understanding of how they manage. I made it clear, though, that if I discovered any dishonesty or actions behind my back, I wouldn't be giving second chances. I would walk away. Thankfully, my coworker has been really supportive, openly sharing how they handled their relationship, and my brother even introduced me to a support group, which has been helpful in processing all of the changes. I've also been reading up on the subject, and by Thursday night, I felt ready to sit down with Betty and check in on where we stood. I had found us a couples therapist, handed her the book I'd finished reading, and suggested that we postpone the wedding for 6 months to reassess our situation. Just as I was explaining my thoughts, Betty stopped me, looking genuinely surprised, and asked if I was planning on dating other people too. It seemed she hadn't even considered that possibility. After that, she completely shut down, barely responding to my questions with more than one word answer. The longest thing she said was, "I just don't know." For the next 24 hours, it felt like she was in a daze, lost in her thoughts. I'm bracing myself for the inevitable emotional fallout, though I would have expected her to feel relieved that I was considering her request. Update 1, by Saturday night, her mood shifted and things quickly escalated. She accused me of suggesting the open relationship as a form of revenge, claiming I only wanted to date other women to punish her. She said all she had asked for was some understanding to explore her feelings. In response, I pointed out that she didn't seem to show any real kissing someone else at the wedding, now essentially asked again. I also that I had heard from our friends that she had specifically asked anything about the wedding made me question. I asked her how she thought it was fair to expect me to sit by while she explored other people, only to return whenever she felt like it. Was I just supposed to wait like a loyal dog, happy for whatever attention she gave me? Things quickly spiraled from there, and we both said some hurtful things. Finally, I laid out 3 options for how we could move forward, though I'm not sure if we'll even get that. I laid out 3 options for how we could move forward. Option 1, we could remain monogamous, postpone the wedding, and commit to couples counseling, but no more experimenting. Once we've worked through our issues and reached a healthier place, we could revisit the idea of marriage, but only with a prenup in place to protect myself if she ever changes her mind or cheats again. Option 2, we could try an open relationship where we both date other people, allowing her to explore her sexuality without limitations. After a year or so, we could reassess and see if marriage is still on the table, if we're even still together by then. Option 3, full separation. She would move out and we'd be free to live our lives independently. If at some point in the future, she decides she wants monogamy with me and I haven't moved on, we could consider option 1, but it would be a fresh start, not just picking up where we left off. After hearing these options, she said she needed space to think and decided to stay with friends for a few days. Before she left, I made it clear that if she accidentally cheated while she was away, she shouldn't bother coming back, except to gather her belongings. This morning, I received a text from her that simply read, "I'm so sorry." When I asked her what she meant, there was no response. And when I tried calling, it went straight to voicemail. I'm not planning on reaching out again and will wait for her to contact me when she's ready. Comments, it seems like your partner has been rather self-centered throughout this process. Taking your time with the engagement is definitely a wise move. The mere suggestion of losing exclusivity can be incredibly destabilizing for a relationship built on monogamy. You seem to be handling things better than she is, which says OOP. I've tried to be as respectful as possible throughout this whole ordeal, but it feels like she's viewing this as a free pass to do whatever she wants while I'm expected to stay on the sidelines, supporting her while she develops feelings for someone else. And then she gets upset when I remind her that she was the one who cheated in the first place. I've just finished printing out cards to send to everyone we had sent save the date notices to, informing them that the cards simply say due to new circumstance. Still unsure how I'll respond when people start asking for detail. Update 2, August 18th, 2024. On Wednesday, Betty had her regularly scheduled therapy session where she discussed everything that had happened between us. I don't know the full details of what was said, but she called me afterward on her way to her friend's house to apologize for some of the things she had said. She wanted to come home and talk it over. I told her to take the night to think things through at her friend's house and suggested we sit down together on Thursday to have a proper conversation. We met for dinner on Thursday, and we both apologized for the heated argument and the hurtful things we said to each other. After discussing things with her therapist and having multiple talks with her best friend, Betty told me she had decided not to pursue her bisexuality. The thought of being in a truly open relationship where I could also be free to sleep with other people terrified her. She realized that getting married and building a life together was more important to her than trying to satisfy a curiosity. Her initial intention had been to have a free pass to explore whether she was missing something important in her life, but I asked for more specifics, whether she was thinking about a one-night stand, dating women, or even a full relationship. She couldn't give me a clear answer, which I pointed out didn't sound very monogamous or fair. She agreed and explained that this was why she had decided to let go of the idea altogether. Next, she brought up the save the date notices I had sent out, canceling our wedding plans. She was caught off guard because she'd started receiving calls from people asking what had happened, and she hadn't known what they were referring to at first. She was upset that I had made that decision without consulting, reminded that she had dropped 2 emotional bombs on me. First, coming out as bisexual, and second, admitting to cheating, and then left without much communication except for a vague "I'm sorry" text. While I hadn't revealed anything specific to others, only mentioning that we were postponing the wedding due to personal issues, there had clearly been rumors spreading about her infidelity. Betty then shifted the conversation, suggesting that we could still get married next spring and try to get back on track. I told her that wasn't realistic. After everything that had happened, every time one of us is out of town, I'll be left wondering if she's cheating again, especially after the way she came out and wanted to explore her sexuality. I suggested that maybe after couples therapy, we could rebuild our relationship, but certainly not by the end of the year. I made it clear that it would be unwise to start planning a wedding. Making any financial commit therapy would even help us heal. In addition, I insisted on having a prenup to protect the assets I'd be bringing into the marriage, as well as my future retirement savings. I also wanted to ensure that if we bought a house together, she wouldn't have any claim to the equity unless she contributed to it. When she protested, I explained that if she was committed to being faithful and staying true to her vows, the prenup would never even come into play. It was simply something to give me peace of mind. This has been a recurring topic of discussion over the past few days. Betty seems to want to brush aside what happened at the wedding and move forward with our plan. In her view, exploring her sexuality isn't worth jeopardizing our relationship. So for now, we're still together and we've agreed to start counseling soon. In retrospect, I realized I rushed into accepting the idea of an open relationship, thinking it would give Betty the freedom to explore her feelings. However, I'm no longer comfortable with that arrangement and feel it's not something I want anymore. I believe a separation is the best option for us right now, giving both of us the space to figure out what we truly want in the long term. It's not what I had hoped for, but I also don't want to spend the next 3 to 5 years together only for her to change her mind down the road or potentially cheat again.